Good morning, Britain. In an explosive revelation by his own ghostwriter, Matt Hancock is alleged to have rejected expert advice to test all residents going into care homes for COVID during the pandemic. The Daily Telegraph reports that the former Health Secretary watered down his own Chief Medical Officer's guidance, saying it muddies the waters.
The government insisted throughout the pandemic they were following the science, but these leaks cast doubt on that claim. Matt Hancock says it is a distorted account.
Two trains collide in northern Greece, leaving at least 32 people dead, dozens more injured. Rescuers have been working through the night to try to free passengers.
Rishi Sunak tries to shore up support for his deal with the EU and finally get Brexit done. One person he won't be winning over is Nigel Farage. We're speaking to him after 8 to find out why he thinks the deal is nothing short of a disaster.
There are reports this morning that the Chancellor is looking at plans to extend help with energy bills, potentially protecting millions of families from the spike in costs come April.
And Lord of the Rings star Andy Serkis tells us why he very nearly turned down his role as a satanic serial killer in the big screen version of the small screen hit Luther. He joins us live later in the show.
And I'm at Cardiff Castle on St David's Day and for the start of meteorological spring. However, it is set to get colder as we head towards next week. There is a possibility of snow. All that and more coming up on Good Morning Britain.
Wednesday, 1st of March, 2023. Live from Television Centre in London. This is Good Morning Britain with Susanna Reid and Ed Bors.
Very good morning to you. Well, absolutely remarkable revelations this morning in the Daily Telegraph. We, of course, have interviewed Matt Hancock very recently about his pandemic diaries, but there appears to be more, and it seems to have been revealed by Isabel Oakeshott, who had access to all of the material.
See, the way it works when you are a former cabinet minister and you've written a book like this is you have to submit it to the Cabinet Office and they will go through every page and ask you to take things out, to change things, to not incriminate civil servants or other ministers, former prime ministers. I think there were hundreds of changes made to the book. And then, of course, Matt Hancock himself can decide what to put in. But the person who wrote the book with him, who had all of his WhatsApp messages for the whole period, called Isabel Oakeshott, journalist, has decided to put them all in the public domain, give them to the Daily Telegraph. There's pages of it today, and, you know, I'm sure Mr Hancock is feeling pretty sore that his collaborator is turned against him, but it's quite dramatic because there's clearly things in the Telegraph today which are absolutely not in the Hancock book.
So Isabel Oakeshott justifies the revelation of these messages by saying that she believes it's taking simply too long for the public inquiry into COVID to happen. Sweden, which we know had, basically no lockdown, has concluded its public inquiry. I think France is pretty well underway with its public inquiry, Italy as well. She says that it took far too long for us to set ours up, and it took months and months and months simply to establish the terms of reference. So her reasoning is, let's get this information out there, because whether you were pro-lockdown, anti-lockdown, whether you had a resident, a loved one in a care home, whether you worked in one, you want to know whether the government were doing the right thing. And she feels that she's doing the right thing.
Yeah, she says, I had to release these messages to avoid a COVID whitewash, she says on the front of the Telegraph. Look, fair play to the Telegraph. If you're given all these WhatsApp messages, you report it, it's in the public interest to be discussed. The difference is that In a public inquiry, there is an open, transparent process. The lawyers go through every document, every paper. You know that when the judge writes the report, they've seen all of the evidence. What Matt Hancock will say today is this is partial, they've missed things out, he's taken out of context. But I'm afraid he's going to be answering questions about this for some weeks and months now. I think it's probably going to put his TV career on hold.
Yeah, well, let's lay out exactly what we know this morning. The former Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, reportedly failed to follow expert advice to test all residents going into care homes in England for COVID. This is the allegation made in the Daily Telegraph after more than 100,000 WhatsApp messages were leaked to the paper.
It claims the Chief Medical Officer, Professor Sir Chris Whitty, wanted testing for all going into care homes, but Mr Hancock believed that would, in his words, muddy the waters. That's in the WhatsApp messages. A spokesman for Mr Hancock insists he was supportive of the guidance, but was told it wasn't deliverable. And our political correspondent, Louisa James, down at Westminster, she'll have been pouring through all of these WhatsApp messages in the Telegraph all night, trying to make sense of it. It's so complicated, but the government insisted throughout the pandemic they were following the science. These leaks suggest maybe that wasn't always the case, Louisa.